I'm introducing now Thomas Schindler to you. He is born in the US and he grew up in Europe in an environment dominated by natural sciences, but he didn't take onto a scientific career. What he's doing, he has been very successfully and also unsuccessfully setting up projects and ventures and ranging from collaboration platforms to mobile couponing systems. Why is he here now? Because he has a journey behind him as a founder and CTO of businesses between 1 to 50 million euros, and he's very, very, very much into sustainability. And he's been awarded by the, what was it? No, that's later. No, that's you. No, that's Thomas Schindler. That's you. I was now mixing you with Florian. No, that's you. Okay, thank you very much.
Check. This one? Okay. Hi, guys. Okay, that's the one, yeah. So it's good to be here. Thank you for having me. I will not be pitching one thing I'm working on. I will be pitching 4. And in order to be able to, for you guys to make sense of this, I will spend a large portion of my time up here talking about why I do this. And so, if we're ready, we can press play. And that represents a large portion of the why. We've been talking about how we are, excuse my French, fucking up the planet. This is my favorite image for showing ecological collapse, and we should really start using that word. I'm not going to go further into this picture because we all know all of the dimensions. If you get me started, I will be speaking here tomorrow. So, but this is not the only thing that's threatening us at the moment. This is another thing. I grew up with this. We've been thinking about nuclear a lot when I was a kid. We don't think about that too much now, but still it's a massive threat at the moment. But it's still not everything. This thing, technology, is threatening to change basically everything we do and the way we do things. And it scares people. It scares people a lot. But if you look at the statistics, things are all moving to the top right. Things are getting better over time. We can measure that. And that's largely thanks to technology. It's good. We're on the right trajectory, despite of all of these negative things. That's my symbol for technology helping us. We need to embrace technology and at the same time not be overwhelmed by it. What does that mean? Who knows Moore's law? Okay, not so many. So let me quickly tell you about Moore's law. Gordon Moore is one of the founders of Intel. You've heard of Intel. And he observed roughly 50, 60 years ago that every 2 years the number or the compute power that you have that you can buy for $1 doubles. Now, if you were awake in that math lesson at school, you know that a doubling over time means an exponential growth. This is why we are also obsessed with the exponential growth of technology. Because every technology that is somehow connected with compute, and basically everything can be loaded with compute, inherits this mechanism. And if you look at an exponential curve, this is just an example, but if you look at the potential it creates, and if you look at the last 25 years, let's say, the potential as a circle of the increase of the compute capacity over time over that 25 years was large. I mean, we did a lot of that with that. We did the internet with that. We did mobile with that. We did a lot of robots with that. But if you look at the next 25 years, this becomes totally ridiculous. Even one single technology of the ones that were invented in the last 10 years has more total capacity than the entire capacity combined in the last 25 years. So this is why it's really crucial to understand that portion. You don't need to understand anything about technology to get that. But in order to navigate all of that, these massive threats and this massive change in technology, we need a goal. We need to know where we want to go. And this is hard. This is really hard. We usually do that with stories. The stories we are telling each other about how we live in the world and how we structure the world. But at the moment, we lack those stories. We don't have them. Just now, like in the last couple of years, one of the leading global stories basically went away as a contender for a leading global story, which is democracy as a story, free democracy and liberal democracy and free markets. We don't have a story. But the UN came to the rescue, or is coming to the rescue. They're giving us this list of things we can strive to, we can look forward to. But when I look at this thing, while it's really, really helpful as a framework to think about what I want to work on and what I want to do, it also is just a to-do list. Right? It's a to-do list to get to a good planet. And when JFK in 1962 stood up and said, let's go to the moon and back alive, he did not give the American people a to-do list. He gave them a vision, an image. So when I try and motivate myself into building organizations or businesses or doing stuff in general, I need to understand, I need to have a picture of the world where the SDGs are solved. And what apart from that motivator, because according to the BCG, solving this to-do list is a $13 trillion opportunity. Some argue it's even more. What I use to get to that picture of the world that I want to see when all the SDGs are solved is a world in which every human being on the planet is equally wealthy on all 5 layers of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Whatever that means on an individual basis. But it also tells us something else. It tells us we have to start at the bottom. We have to start at the physiological needs layer. We have to solve that for everyone on the planet. And this is what drives me. So what I'm doing for this is, 6 years ago I started a software company that builds software as a foundational layer, basically, as an infrastructural layer, to work on projects for clients and in our own motivation to work towards this kind of world. A second thing, oops, that was too fast. A second thing, 3 years ago, with a couple of people who more or less are like me, 20 people, we started Catapult Now, which helps large organizations create mind shift and paradigm shift within their organizations towards these goals. Because that's what we need. Paradigm shifts in large organizations towards making this happen, this world happen that we want. We also, you've heard about purpose in the case of Ecosia, which is a beautiful mechanism to help organizations balance profit orientation and purpose orientation. With Menschheit, we are building something similar. We are building a foundation that serves as a mission-driven protection mechanism. Basically, it allows companies in any regulatory framework on the planet to go mission bankrupt, not only financially bankrupt. And the one I am spending most of my time on and which I'm most excited about is Vuya, which is a cargo and passenger drone that we are currently building to solve transportation in rural areas, especially in developing countries. So why is this important? This is important because if you want to bring Africa to a transportational level, let's just speak about road infrastructure, comparable to Europe, Africa needs 500 million cars and has to 2,500 increase the number of streets by 2,500%. That's not feasible, not from any perspective. Flying from point to point without any infrastructure can solve that. So this is why we built this. Thank you.
Listening to you, do you have a question? Not yet. Listening to, you have one, I go for yours. First, yeah?
A model like the African ones to move people, things with drones or flight. It's possible in Europe or to implement, not now, like in 100 years in the rest of the world?
Well, from a technical perspective, all of that is solved, right? From a regulatory perspective, it's not solved. And your question is, when will it be solved, right? We don't know. We have a sister company for Vuya that is trying to work on that by creating a sports event around passenger drones to raise the awareness that it is actually safe to do that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you look at what happens, if you want to bring 500 kilos of stuff into the air, which is what you're doing, you have to push down 500 kilo of air molecules. So imagine all of the cars we have there pushing down their own weight all the time onto the city. That's just not feasible. Mm-hmm. So this is why you have to do it in rural areas. So I don't know.
Coming back to this idea of going into the airspace, it reminds me of a talk by Rebecca Winthrop from Brookings Institution in the United States. And she says we more often have to think about leapfrogging, not developing something incremental, rather than really thinking totally out of the box. Mm-hmm. Is that something you believe in to solve these challenges we have with the SDGs?
Absolutely. I mean, I like thinking as an entrepreneur and software developer. I'm fundamentally lazy.
In which sense?
In which sense? In the sense that I want to reuse as much stuff as possible. So what I try and do is I look at existing mental models, I look at existing structures and try to reconfigure them into something new. And this is sometimes this is then called leapfrogging, mm-hmm. but I believe that we should change our thinking not so much from what is possible, but what we want to solve,
what we wish, mm-hmm.
and how do we get there? What components do we need to place, like building something in Lego, right?
But how can software not rescue the planet perhaps, but how can software do better to the world? In your understanding?
Okay.
Is that a silly question?
No, it's not a silly question. I think in 2011, I think, Mark Andreessen, the guy who, you guys probably know Mozilla, Netscape, he gave us the first ever web browser. Mark Andreessen started then the largest VC fund in Silicon Valley. And as part of his PR campaign, he wrote an article in the I think it was the New York Times, and it was titled "Software is Eating the World." Now you can look at that from a positive and from a negative perspective, but it is a fact that whatever we can put into software, we are putting into software. Mm-hmm. So when we do that, mm-hmm. we have to make sure it's not only technologically sound and mm-hmm. good, but it's also ethically sound and mm-hmm. good.
One very last quick question, quick answer, if I may say.
Yeah.
How do you measure mission bankruptcy?
Well, that's not a short answer. I'm sorry.
Okay, make it as short as possible.
Well, we trust in people. We believe in people. So what we do is we establish a second board for a company, which is responsible for monitoring that. Because it's a very, very complex and individual problem for each company, and you cannot...
Self-monitoring.
Self-monitoring, but in a very controlled way. So we can go. There's portions of sortition, which is the basis of the Greek democracy in there. There is portions of golden share mechanisms, like with purpose and ecosia in there. There's a lot of transparency in there. There's a mix of things that can make this happen, and we have this governance model that makes this happen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.